What up, y'all? I'm Dr. CBS here with Dr. Jared Ball, and you're tuned into episode 9 of The Last Dope Intellectual. All right, y'all. So for this segment of Shoot the Shit, we have a few things that we want to talk about, right? First of all, my beloved Black Alliance for Peace, BAP, is turning 4 this year. To be exact, on April 4th. And I wanted to mention this not only because BAP is dope, and I'm so glad that it's our 4th anniversary, but also because April 4th is a very auspicious date because it is the day of the assassination of Martin Luther King. And that day, like after his assassination, a whole bunch of rebellions and riots and uprisings sparked throughout the nation. It also was a signal for the start of the Black Studies movement and just so much Black power, Black radical, Black revolutionary activism, organizing, and struggle popped off with the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, because it was kind of like, listen, King was trying to work with y'all, right? King was trying to work within the structures of the system. Granted, he was getting more and more radical with his critique of Vietnam, with his critique of white liberals, with his increasing critique of being able to struggling for rights, for access, but not being able to pay for that access, those sorts of things. So he was getting more radical with his critique. And so it was like, he's trying to work with y'all and y'all still want smoke? All right, well, we got something for you. And so, after his assassination, that's when things got much, much more militant and more revolutionary, really.
Right on. And to your point, one of the ideas that took on expansion was the internationalism that King was in many ways late to in terms of the tradition of radical Blackness. But even after his assassination, it expanded. And that's why, BAP is in a perfect tradition, as is our shirts, which I don't want to step too far away from.
And Africa. Hey, I like that. That's real dope.
Yeah, that little spin on that, that athletic company. You know what I'm saying? The 3 stripes of red, black, and green now. So anyway, but so yeah, and as the dialectic or the contradictions of life and world struggle show, once there is this level of repression, there comes a response. And unfortunately, we had to lose King in that way, but there was, and I think in many ways continues to be, certainly represented in the tradition of BAP, the appropriate response. So.
Yeah, so I'm so excited for BAP. We have our big membership meeting on April 3rd. And I can't wait to see the work that we continue to do to build on the amazing work that has already been done by BAP. So not least, we launched this huge U.S. out of Haiti campaign. We did several protests in D.C., in Chicago, and elsewhere, solidarity with Bessemer, Alabama. We're, our U.S. out of Afghanistan campaign through the BAP support network, our 1033 work, our U.S. out of Africa and AFRICOM work. So I'm just excited to see how we continue to, hold U.S. imperialism accountable. So the next thing, y'all, the next exciting bit of news is Black Power Media's coming morning show. So Jared.
The remix.
Hey, okay. So Jerry, you, Kamau, Kalonji, the ear doctor have been talking about this for a minute. So why a morning show?
Well, again, selfishly speaking for myself, as someone who is a consumer of news, I wanted to see something and participate in something that did what I see happening more often on YouTube and other other outlets. That challenges that mainstream morning model of, where we can come in and we can have a little fun. We can talk about the news of the day, but all in the context of the politics and ideas that we work with here on this channel. So I can't think of a better way that I would want to start the day as a consumer of news than with a group like we are compiling for through this channel and through this network and for this show, to start a day off. So starting on 4/20, April 20th, we're going to do,
for all my weed
Tuesday,
smokers out there.
You know what I'm saying? Let's say put one up in the air, do what you got to do, whatever that wake and bake thing. Welcome to it, join. We'll have something for you. So we'll have that sort of like that organic soul food media diet, you know what I mean? That people can start their day with. And so on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern, we're going to start with that and try to, manage the rollout. But I look forward to it expanding both in days and time, soon thereafter. But initially, that's where we're going to start. We're going to have a lot of people coming through, you and others participating. And I think it's going to be great. I look forward to it. So we've been telling people we're expanding with this channel. So people supporting this channel is this is part of what their support is helping develop. So I'm very excited, looking forward to it.
Very much so. So y'all, your Patreon donations, your BPM subscriptions, y'all are making possible the expansion of the platform. So thank you. And for 2021, be on the lookout. Remix Morning Show. All right. We got another Black Radical brunch coming up, Jared.
Yes.
This weekend.
Again, sorry, but again, talk about great ways to start a day,
Yeah, well, Black this is more so brunch. Midday. It's brunch. It ain't breakfast. It's brunch. But yeah, if you get up later on the weekends, but it is going to be on Sunday, April 4th, 2021 at 12 p.m. Eastern time. Black Radical Brunch will be joined by my girl, Dr. Layla Brown. We'll be joined by the amazing Dr. Keto Swan. And, we'll be eating, talking shit, analyzing, critiquing, roasting. You know how it goes. So we got a particular roast for Dr. Keto Swan. If he's watching this, be ready, Doc. But so that's exciting. And guess what? The very next day, Jared, what do you got going on?
Hey, the very next day, I'm very happy that we're going to do a members only 10th anniversary discussion about my first book, I Mix What I Like, a mixtape manifesto, and came out 10 years ago, almost to the month or the day, even by the time we taped that on the 5th, or go live, that is on the 5th for members at 12 noon Eastern time, April 5th, Monday. And we're going to talk a little bit about, by the way, as I've continued to appreciate your discussion of your writing process, one of the many stories about the behind the scenes development of that book is the ways I did not follow that path in the ways I think people really need to. So it's going to be, I'm going to tell some stories about that process that I haven't shared before, and some things I got right, some things I didn't get so right in terms particularly of the process, and some other little tidbits and gems. So I look forward to that, and just an exciting way to appreciate our members, encourage others to join the channel, and to celebrate this 10th anniversary, and have a little fun. So get a whole members only weekend coming.
So we might need to do a I Mix What I Like reading group. So on your book, why not like maybe a members only or a Patreon subscriber?
That would be dope. I think again, there are many imperfections that we could certainly point out, but I think even in doing that it would be helpful, and I think a reading group would benefit from it. There's a lot that I think would still be relevant, even in making some loving critiques. So don't absolutely,
don't be scared. Like, we're not gonna come for you. I'm sure it's fine.
Oh no, please. People have been coming for a long time. I'm not worried about that. I'm just saying, really what I was just trying to not discourage people from offering the criticism. Really, sometimes people don't want to do it. So there's it would be all would be welcomed. And you can get the book for free, by the way, just at imixwhatilike.org in the book section. You can get a free digital copy. read it real quick. It's not too much and then sure, let's do that. I think that's a good idea.
So Jared, what is one of the most bad faith critiques you've got of the book? Because of course there's good faith, loving, like comradely critiques, but people they just be on that bullshit. So like, what's
interesting. That's a good one. I don't know. The maybe the worst ones are, and I could see where this could be. I could see where they would the criticisms would generate from where they would develop. But because I'll certainly try to explain more during the discussion, but because I was trying to synthesize what all has inspired me from the various radical camps, from materialist to the African-centered, both sides found many. So sometimes cats were like, they saw a reference to Marx and were like, oh, he's Eurocentric. This is whack. Let's get him out of here. And then others would see a reference to Clark or Jupp and say, oh, he's on that Afrocentric stuff. And let's get him out of here. But I always think, honestly, the worst faith critique is the omission and the refusal to discuss or engage. That's what I've always found to be, the more interesting. And then even some of the responses that have come many years later, in terms of regretting, their role in marginalizing the work when it came out. Some of which we'll talk about too. So, but yeah, those were where the stuff was coming, So that second invitation didn't always come after that first to certain spaces, because they'd be like, oh, there he goes with that nonsense. And
can't win. I mean, you can't win. You two red for the blacks and two black for the reds.
That's what it is. That's what it is. So,
but that's why we Rodneyists in here, because we don't have to make that distinction. So, and
can I just say something? Speaking of which, look what I just came from me after your inspirational. Yes. So I'm getting caught up too. You know what I mean? Good. So getting, clearing up some of the gaps working with you on this LDI project. So.
Perfect. All right, y'all. So that's our short and sweet shoot the shit for this week. Tune in to Black Radical Brunch. Tune in to JAB's 10-year anniversary, members only on Monday. And we'll see you there. All right, y'all. We have such a dope, very special interview today with one of the owners of Black Power Media, an amazing organizer and thinker and lawyer. We got Kamau Franklin. So let me go ahead and read this very impressive bio. Kamau Franklin is the founder of Community Movement Builders, a grassroots organization dedicated to creating sustainable Black communities through organizing and cooperative development. Kamau has been a dedicated community organizer for over 25 years, first in New York City and now based in the South. He has worked on various issues, including youth organizing and development, police misconduct, community cop watch programs, freedom school programs for youth, electoral and policy campaigns, large-scale community gardens, and alternatives to incarceration programs. Kamau is a former co-chair of the National Conference of Black Lawyers and a former member of the New York Executive Committee of the National Lawyers Guild. He was the first campaign manager for Chokwe Lumumba's successful mayoral election. Kamau Franklin was in private practice as an attorney from 2000 to 2007 and has worked in a variety of legal areas, including criminal, federal, civil rights, human rights issues, and contract law. He has written articles and has been interviewed for numerous online publications. And his essay entitled An Ivory Tower Assassination of Malcolm X appeared in the book A Lie of Reinvention, Correcting Manning Marable's Malcolm X. His essay, A New Southern Strategy, was published in the book Jackson Rising, The Struggle for Economic Democracy and Black Self-Determination in Jackson, Mississippi. And he is married and he is a father of a daughter and a son. So welcome, Kamau. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. And thank you for reading my long bio. I didn't know it was going to be that long.
Y'all, and that was the truncated version, okay? This man sent me a whole autobiography. But anyway, so let's get to it. All right. So Kamau, you have a long history, as people heard in your bio, of organizing and participating in movements for racial justice and Black self-determination. What inspires you to do this work? And can you tell us more about your organizing background?
Sure. I mean, I would say that I came to organizing or politics basically through my mom, like, and she wouldn't necessarily know that or understand that. But my mom grew up in Charleston, South Carolina during Jim Crow. And so she would tell us stories about playing or just life under Jim Crow. And one particular story is playing on an all whites playground and having a cop, white cop, come chase her off and her friends off. And she was a little slow and she got hit in the back. And so my mom has a scar to this day. She's nearly 80 years old. That's a raised scar from getting hit in the back with a billy club from a white cop during segregation in Jim Crow. And so when you hear stories like that, and my mom would talk about race and color, and she's a very open person. My mom's a dark-skinned Black woman. And when she decided to have kids, part of her thinking was that her kids would have a better chance in America if they were lighter. And so my sister is a little lighter than my mom, because her father's a light-skinned Black man, and then my father was white. And my mom, I'm not saying she didn't like who she decided to get with, but she did it also based on skin and colorism and so forth. And I think those things, when you hear those kind of stories, they just make you think about how the world operates, why, we grew up in the projects. So like, why do we live where we live? Why do other folks have more resources? Sort of the history of civil rights and movement. And it just got me reading and reading and reading. And I think by the time I was in my mid-20s, I was ready to go. And I started joining Black organizations, Black militant organizations, nationalist organizations. I read a lot of Malcolm. I later read, even though he's not like Black, but I felt like he opened up a worldview in terms of international affairs for me. Was reading Noam Chomsky work.
You love Noam Chomsky. I don't know. I'm not sold, but okay.
I don't give Noam enough credit. So that stuff was really important in getting me to organize. And for me, it all became sort of like that idea, like how do you create organization and apparatus to bring power to Black communities? And so that is something that I've tried to continue to work on and develop and think about through all of my sort of organizing endeavors.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by power?
Power, I mean, is that Black folks have a right and should control every and any institution and or organization and or government apparatus that has any power over our lives. If we don't control it, then we should destroy it. If we don't control it, then we need to take it over. Anything that has to do with our socialization, education, monetary interests, Black folks, just like anybody else, need to control that. Because if you don't control something like that, then whoever is controlling it has power over you. And I think one of the things that we don't think enough about is how do we gain power, even if it's a little by little, incrementally speaking. How do we create institutions that we can grow? How do we organize so that we can take over things and have power over where resources are directed? I think it's a sham for us to think that anybody else is going to liberate us or set us free, or even sort of lessen the conditions of white supremacy only when it pleases them or it makes sense for them to do so. Will that kind of stuff happen? And so I think when I say power, I mean collective power, right? Organizations and apparatuses where there's a sharing of power, there's a sharing of how resources get distributed, not this sort of one person does everything and everybody else watches and follows. Period.
All right. So you founded an organization called Community Movement Builders, CMB, not Cash Money Boys, y'all. Community Movement Builders. Located in Atlanta, Georgia, with chapters in other cities. So what is CMB and what are its aims and goals, and what are some of its programs and initiatives?
So Community Movement Builders is a grassroots organizing initiative. I would say our work is around Black self-sustainability, Black self-determination. Again, the idea of working to create institutions for power. I would divide our work up into two particular areas, which is organizing. So we organize on the ground with, we're like a place-based organization. We have a community house in a working class neighborhood in Atlanta. And through that community house, we work with the neighbors and residents The two areas of work that we maintain or do a lot of organizing around is one is anti-gentrification work. So it's very important for us in the neighborhood that we're in, Atlanta, which considers itself this Black Mecca or this place where Black people can come strive, is really a place that's going under a tremendous amount of gentrification. The idea that the systems that are in place that we don't control, even though there is Black representation, still doesn't do anything to make sure that Black working class and poor people have power, access to resources, have control over their lives. Instead, Atlanta has pushed those folks out. So we do organizing around the issue of gentrification in that neighborhood. And we also do organizing around the issue of police brutality. Less than a mile from our community house, Rayshard Brooks was killed last summer. And that was something that started us getting more involved in the police brutality fight in Atlanta and the sort of the national phenomenon that was going on after George Floyd and Breonna Taylor were killed. So that's one area of our work. And I would say the second area of our work is what we call Black sustainability work. And so we're developing cooperatives. We have a CMOS cooperative. I know you brought some CMOS. We're very happy about that. We have a CMOS cooperative where we sell CMOS actually in a cooperative grocery store and in two other grocery stores in Atlanta. We're trying to expand beyond that. We're trying to hire our first worker owner this year. And so that's exciting. We have a food cooperative, a kale chip cooperative, a security cooperative. And in that security cooperative, we actually do a cop watch where we have our folks go out and watch the police in the neighborhood and also help provide safety for folks in the neighborhood to de-escalate any issues or concerns that we see so that it doesn't get to a level where people think that they need to call the police to come in and do anything to folks in our community. So those things are the sort of core avenues or things that we work on. We are overwhelmingly a volunteer organization. Although we have our 501c3, our nonprofit, we have a dual structure, which is around having a coordinating committee and having committees where the folks who come in do the work. We are driven by our work through our political ideas and our thoughts and our philosophies. So people join us, not because they think they're going to get a job, but they join us because we're doing this grassroots organizing. And the motto is, can we do the things that the Panthers did? Can we do the things that in some ways that the nation has done? Can we do the things that UNIA has done in the past? So can we be a grassroots organizing operation that can be mass-based? People can join, any Black person can join, as long as they believe in some of the areas of work that we do and some of the philosophies that we have that we keep, relatively speaking, general. Because we think, again, our power is going to be driven by folks having sort of an ideological position against capitalism, and or against racial capitalism, against other folks, white supremacy, and other folks having power over us. But for us, creating institutions, again, and organizational apparatuses that work for our people.
Okay. Hey, recently somebody hated on, or many people were hating on y'all community fridge. Can you say a little bit more about like that situation, the reporting on that situation, and how you responded to it?
Yeah, so as we've gotten into this fight around gentrification, it's so weird. One of the things that of all the things I've ever done to get on people's nerves, to piss people off, to show some sort of political alternative or something like that. So we put in a free fridge in a community garden that we are the caretakers of. It's right next door to our house. And we thought, during a pandemic, the food is in the refrigerator. Anybody can come take the food. At first, everyone in the community seemed to support it. Folks who lived there would come, live in all that block would come get food out of that. People would walk and come get food. But as we developed this, all of a sudden, this one person in particular started to organize. She's a Black woman, and she started to organize mainly with the white owners, all who were there for less than 2 years. We've been in that neighborhood for about 6 years, new to the area. And the woman who started organizing actually used to go in the fridge and get food out. But they started organizing to have the refrigerator removed. I give them credit as a group. They went to the city council, they went to the neighborhood association, they went to the parks department. And the person who was responsible for actually bringing the fridge to us, we were sort of the caretakers of the fridge. She decided that she didn't want the commotion, and so she decided to take the fridge out. And we thought that was going to be the end of it, even though we thought it was a battle lost. We were like, well, if folks are feeling that way, some folks were for us, some folks were against us. Maybe, we won't die on this hill. But then this particular person kept going. So she then started calling the cops on our activities. And so we've had the cops show up when we've done simple things like community gardening or having a meeting in our community house. She's called code enforcement on us, claiming that our houses got rubbish in front of it and so forth. So, and then lastly,
is she British? Why is she complaining about rubbish? I'm just kidding.
I like to show you my extensive vocabulary. And then she called NPR, the local affiliate, to do a news story about the fridge, which was already removed by that point. And then they ran this story based on the narrative that she gave. They never gave us an opportunity to counter her narrative, which were filled with lies, including not mentioning the fact that she used to use the fridge, saying that the fridge was
How you gonna come and take the snacks?
How you gonna do that?
How you gonna come and take the snacks and then complain about it? That's just so raggedy for so many reasons. I'm upset about that.
I'm upset about that. And the media, and they got the story wrong. And so we've now decided that if it's going to be a fight, then let's just fight, right? So we're going to bring back a fridge. And this time, instead of putting it in a park, we're going to put it on our property.
And she can't have none. She can't have nothing in it. How about that?
She can't come on our property. That's right. So, we're going to have that fight now. It's like at first we were sort of doing that thing around like as community organizers, what do we do to sort of win folks over? And some folks we have won over. She's actually isolated herself because of certain sort of belligerent attitudes and her calling the police. We even, and us telling folks, it's like, look, calling the police on an organization like ours has a certain reaction to it, right? We are a overtly political, radical organization. The cops already know who we are. You are giving them entree to come watch us and potentially try to move on us, and that we just can't stand for. We can't negotiate anymore, right? That's past that time. So so we're going to get down with the fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's interesting, thinking about Black self-determination. It's like, what do you do with the mammies in the in the community? Because this is a Black woman who's then turning to the whites to to move against the community. So very interesting. But that relates to, you talked about gentrification and CMB's struggle against gentrification in Atlanta. So can you just say a little bit more about why it is that gentrification is such an important issue and how it directly threatens the livelihoods of Black working and oppressed people?
Well, I'll start off with a little story. When we first got to the neighborhood, we did what we called the People's Assembly or community gathering, where we got folks to come out to say, what is it that an organization of our size, our resources could do that help support this community? And, folks talked about a number of things as folks do. They talked about everything, some things we didn't know we can necessarily do anything about, like potholes. People talked about crime, of course, or safety. They talked about food and not having access to healthy foods. But the thing that kept coming up all the time was the issue of, look, our rents are going up, taxes are going up. They're building these new houses, and these houses are like, when we brought our community house, it was $50,000, and by the time we started talking to these folks, housing value was already doubled, right? So and now 5 years later, housing value has gone up 5 times. Like our house is now worth over $200,000, and we haven't done that much to the house to be that kind of a significant uptick in terms of the value of the house. So it's those stories started to come, like, it makes no difference what you do to the community if we're not here to enjoy it or be a part of it. And people think that, when you put shiny new things into working class and poor communities, that somehow means you're improving community. But what you're really doing is setting the basis for people to be pushed out of those communities because they can no longer afford, again, the rents or the mortgage payments. And when you've paid off your mortgage after 30 years and you think you're going to live this comfortable life, all of a sudden you get hit with a tax bill that's now $3,000 or $4,000, and you got to pay that all at once. And so when the city allows, and the city doesn't only allow, but works with real estate developers to start making changes to neighborhoods and then claiming that those changes are for the benefit because they're ending blight or they're bringing more green spaces, what they're really doing is chasing people out. And now people are moving further away from the central city where they have access to transportation, jobs, social services, whatever it is, those things are further away from them. And then secondly, people lose a sense of community. Like, no one is saying living in poor and working class communities is always great. There's obviously challenges, but people have a sense of community. People know who can watch their kid, who can even watch their car. They know what's going on down the block. They know who they can borrow money from. So there's a sense of who their friends are, who their neighborhoods are, who their neighbors are, who their community is. And then that gets taken away because all of a sudden you have mainly these white folks who come in who they're not looking to be a part of the community. They're looking to change the community over. And so they do things like, we don't want you to feed people in the neighborhood with a free fridge, because they're bringing in a certain element into the community, which was one of the things that they said. They, in Harlem, is like the story of when white folks started moving into Harlem. There's a park that's called Marcus Garvey Park, and there were drummers for like 10 years. They would drum in the park every morning, every Sunday morning. They would drum in the park. When the white folks started moving in, they started calling the cops on the drummers, saying that the drumming was too loud, right? So the culture changes of the neighborhood, the amenities change when the Starbucks and the Whole Foods come in, and those things aren't made for us. So people think that even when the few people who are homeowners sell their homes, that and they get some value off of it, they still cannot afford to live in the central city, or Atlanta in this particular case, because every place else is too expensive. These working class neighborhoods, those prices are going up. But in other areas, those prices are already going up tenfold. So they still, do riches, you still can't live in the city. You're still looking for spaces outside of it. So you, again, lose all those amenities, all of those things that the central city brings to you. So gentrification basically is a form of ethnic cleansing that moves poor and working class, Black people in particular, brown people too, and in some places, poor whites, but mostly it is poor and working class Black folks who are getting pushed out of city after city. And again, in Atlanta, this is being done under Black leadership, Black political leadership, which is sided with white economic interests to push Black folks out of Atlanta.
It's such an interesting conundrum, because it's as if the choice is between having disinvested, poorly resourced Black communities, or, you know, when services or public spaces or parks are put in, it's a method of pushing Black people out. So it's like, we can't have shit, right? It's like we either have these sort of hollowed out spaces to live, or there's a threat of white folks, when any improvement happens, the threat of white folks coming and taking our shit.
Well, I think it's a false choice, right? I think that's the choice that the city gives you. That's the choice that the real estate developers give you, as opposed to thinking out a plan that's around how do you build neighborhoods and bring in affordable housing, right? How does that get done? How do you do land trusts to stabilize home value prices so that those who are longtime residents get to stay in their neighborhoods? How do you build cooperative economics in those places through cooperatives and so forth, so that is the folks who can have a cooperative grocery store that the people in the neighborhood own, right? People in the neighborhood could be the owners of things like that. So what do we think about in terms of what is economic development? And I think because a lot of this is about political orientation, political ideology, city leaders, along with their sort of real estate developer friends, only put forth the choice to us that development means shiny new things, or big box stores, or things that are owned by large operations that are international in nature, as opposed to like, what is the steady work that needs to be done to make sure that this neighborhood is improved in a way that allows folks to stay in their homes, and allows folks to enjoy new amenities, and allow folks to have power and ownership over these amenities. And so again, the problem becomes is that these folks have no ideology outside of what they're taught, outside of what they learn, outside of what they believe, which benefits them individually and lets them get into the big rooms with the corporate heads and so forth. And they feel that's the place where they want to be. So they're not thinking about what's the long-term interest of Black people. Instead, they're thinking about what's the way in which we push Black folks out the city. Again, there's famous stories in Atlanta where all the public housing was knocked down and destroyed, and no affordable housing, well, not a lot of affordable housing was built to take its place. Again, pushing poor folks out. During the Olympics, they actually paid poor people to leave the city and not to come back. So these things are purposeful because it's based on the ideology of whatever capitalism says is right is what should be moved forward, as opposed to, again, looking at alternative methods of development, which may take longer, but may also keep people in their homes, may also provide economic resources that people can control, as opposed to just saying, let's get rid of people and replace them, and then we've solved the problem.
Yeah, and part of that also, I think, is not letting these places become dilapidated in the first place, right? And upkeep, just basic upkeep, like we deserve regular trash services. We deserve to have these road fixed. It doesn't matter, that it's Black people living there, right? That doesn't mean that then you don't have to have any services there because it's just Black people. But, thinking about how to keep our communities like clean and safe, not safe in the sense of obviously police occupation, but safe in the sense that people have the conditions through which they can flourish. And anyway, so you mentioned cooperatives about 10 times in our conversation so far, which I think is really, really important. So can you just say a little bit more about like what a cooperative is and what it actually existing cooperative like in a Black community looks like? And then so you mentioned some of the cooperatives like the CMOS cooperative, Kale Chips that you got CMB currently has, and what are some others that you're hoping to build?
I mean, cooperatives are basic. I mean, and folks should be clear about this. Cooperatives are businesses. They're economic models of development. And the thing that's different about cooperatives, so people on the left, sometimes they like the idea of cooperatives, but they don't have necessarily a business idea. So instead, the cooperatives turn into more meetings, right? So what you have to have at the beginning is an idea about a service or product that you want to supply. The thing about cooperatives that makes them so fantastic is that they're an alternative to sort of standard vertical capitalist development, right? So what they do is that you have worker cooperatives. And so it's the folks themselves who are putting in the labor who then own the cooperative. And so when there are profits to be shared, those profits go to a multitude of people. And then when there are organizational apparatuses that are connected to them, like a CMB, a community movement builders, they get a share, which helps continue on with the community work. And so what happens is that those resources get distributed to more people, as opposed to something that gets distributed to a top management class or a top ownership class, which then takes those resources and does whatever they want to do with them. So cooperatives allows for a larger sharing of resources across a larger foundation of people. And it allows for the ownership, i.e. the power to direct how those products are distributed, to direct how those products are made. And so those things are important because then they come again, but the other part of cooperatives is about a political education building, right? Again, if you just set up an enterprise and just because it has multiple amounts of owners without the political education aspect of it, it still doesn't mean that may not go awry. So all of stuff is based on what is the political education that's part of the cooperative economic structures. And so when you have that mix, and then the history of cooperatives in the Black community is that they were something that sustained us a lot of times, particularly during the era of segregation. So cooperatives were very popular in the Black community. One of the most famous is Fannie Lou Hamer having cooperatives, cooperative farm and so forth, that got to distribute food on a large basis that included mutual aid and the distribution of food products and so forth. So those are the things that matter in terms of keeping a community going and striving, particularly when it has access to little else, right? And those are the things that you use as platforms to build a certain amount of economic strength and power, which can then transform into some political power and transfer into sort of ownership of some neighborhood resources, and even more than that. So that's why cooperatives become this powerful alternative model to straight capitalist development, because there are more shared resources and those resources grow within sort of a community apparatus. And so again, for us, it allows us to start experimenting with different ways in which we sort of bring that support to our folks. I talked about the CMOS, I think cooperative, and I think the security cooperative for us is something that's really important because it ties in, one, working against police brutality and police misconduct in our neighborhood by doing these cop watches. And one of the things I didn't necessarily mention during the gentrification conversation was how over-policing plays a role in helping to move people out of communities by ticketing, code enforcement, false arrests, and harassment. Those things are always part and parcel to the Black community in terms of policing and how it's done. But when gentrification comes in and you have white folks who start to move in communities, those things start to multiply. Many folks who move from like New York in an amazing way over the last like 10 years, and we've had to sort of reverse migration, have cited police harassment, right? Police harassment is a reason why they left New York to return to the South. Like, get that, right? So that sort of reverse migration is based on people having their neighborhoods gentrified and people attacked. For us, the security cooperative allows us, we're so excited about it because it allows us to, one, get to know folks in the community, to walk with folks, to talk with folks, so again, to help solve problems, and at the same time, to help develop young folk, young adults with certain skills that we can also help get them security jobs. So that kind of thing is important. It's something that we want to build on. I'm also on the board of Cooperation Jackson, and we do work with them. We're going to do some joint enterprises soon because we think it's really important to, again, not to make sure that these cooperatives, that some of them may start off local, but you have to build out in order to have those resources in order to fight for real power. So we are very excited about it. We think it's sort of this thing that we need to dig deep into and need to experiment with, because we're not going to get power through the current economic system and through the current economic structures, because they're not going to work for us. Again, we need to build, take over, and reassess what power looks like for us in our community.
Very thorough. One book that I do want to recommend with in regard to Black cooperatives is Jessica Gordon Nimbar's Collective Courage. Is one of the best books, I think, on Black cooperatives. There you go. And then also one of my favorite pieces by W.E.B. Du Bois is Social Planning for the Negro Past and Present, written in 1936, where he talks about consumer cooperatives, producer cooperatives, and a cooperative Black economy. So this is in his nationalist era, the national era of Du Bois. All right, finally, you helped to organize a large Haiti Solidarity rally in Atlanta on Monday, March 29th. Of course, the Black Alliance for Peace had one as well in DC on March 29th. And there was actions happening all over the country and, of course, all over the world in solidarity with Haiti. So what's the connection between the work you and CMB are doing and the struggle that's happening in Haiti? And also, how did you bring so many organizations together for that rally?
Well, our organization, as you know, we talked about sort of our politics around power. Also, part of our politics is Pan-Africanism. So we believe, and internationalism, but for us, Pan-Africanism is a central core. We believe, like, you know, we're not sort of like folks on an island. Like, white supremacy and capitalism is a worldwide system. It's not something that just happens in working class neighborhoods. It's something that doesn't just happen in Atlanta and Southwest Atlanta. These are international structures. They manifest themselves in different ways, and they basically control and take over resources, and they use for other folks, for workers within their systems, right? And so we're going to break free of that. We're going to change that. Part of what we have to do is to link up internationally and create a struggle that's broader than just what's happening on the block, right? I never believe, like, you know, sometimes there's these leftist truisms around that everything has to be local. Well, some things are local, but they're not really going to be striving for real power if they're not connecting themselves from local to national to international. So within that mix, we created the Pan-African Solidarity Network. And so we, our lead organizer is Dr. Mamira Prosper, who is Haitian, who grew up in Haiti, born in Haiti, has lots of connections, and who is really responsible for making the connections that made the International Day of Action happen. We work on the ground with the Haitian Socialist Organization, and we're actually supporting them monetarily with doing some sustainable development in Haiti, as those folks challenge their corrupt government, U.S. Invasion, well, it's always been an invasion, but U.S. hegemony, I should say, over Haitian politics. So as folks are battling on the ground around resources, they're also battling the big picture of an oppressive government that's taking away any sense thereof of democracy, any sense thereof of real development that could happen. And so Sister Mamira, she gathered these different forces together, knowing that in Haiti on the 29th was, I think it's the day that the new constitution was formed under Aristide. And so it was a particularly special day for folks to gather and to organize against this latest government, and to remember that that old constitution was thrown out and this new one was started, which gave full democratic rights to people on the ground, which, and as soon as it was enacted, the US and its cronies did everything they could to destroy it and destroy the people's choice at that particular time, Aristide, in terms of enacting this constitution fully. Mm-hmm. So that was a sort of a mainstay for a call for us to do action with organizations, again, not only within the United States, but organizations in Latin America. There were organizations in South Africa that joined in. And so this collective group of folks wanted to say, we stand with Haiti. We stand with Haiti as the only republic that is born from enslaved Africans freeing themselves, throwing off somewhat the yokes of white supremacy and colonialism, fighting for its survival because it could never sort of truly be free, since it did that because white folks are saying, we have to show you that if you want to be free, you're going to be punished for being free. And the threat of a good example, as Chomsky points out, is that the threat of
you could have quoted CLR, you could have quoted hella other people about Haiti.
Every now and then I got to quote a Chomsky.
That's your man, though.
Like Chomsky. I don't know why.
That's
that white man was good. He's a good white man. I like him. That the threat of a good example is what the U.S. and the international system is most scared of, whether that's a communist example, whether that's a socialist example, even whether or not it's a government form that we don't necessarily agree with, whether or not it's a religious formation, i.e. like in Iran in terms of their form of government. If you break out the capitalist orbit and you start doing things that show that you will have power outside of the control of Western capitalism, you are now a target. So China is a target, not because of human rights violations, not because of what's happening in Hong Kong, but because China has played their game, whether you like China or not, and now has a sense of power and a sense of control and a sense of access to resources and a sense of like, we will give some resources again to other places. And maybe it's not always the best beneficial relationship, but it's outside of this Western capitalist orbit. The Western capitalist orbit will not allow that to happen without a fight, right? And so that's what's happening in China. That's what's happening in Iran. That's actually what's happening in Syria to a degree. That's what's happening in Haiti. And that's what's happening in Cuba. That's what's happening in Venezuela. This is a challenge to white supremacy. And it's a fight that these countries are having. And we have to support, particularly a country like Haiti, who is in our hemisphere. And we can do something on the ground to stop the U.S. government. And I should say also, it's what's happening in Palestine, that we should stop the U.S. government and its allies from their white supremacist and capitalist greed to control these resources and these people.
And that's how Mary had a little lamb, as they say. Kamau Franklin, thank you so much. This was such an informative conversation. I particularly loved how you illuminated cooperatives and the challenge to gentrification, and then made those connections to the international situation. So thank you for being here. Where can people find you?
People can find us on all social media, Community Movement Builders, and at our website, communitymovementbuilders.org. And we have an email, info@Community Movement Builders, if they're interested in supporting us or working with us and that kind of thing. So thank you so much for having me. Your show is dope. And like, you're the last dope intellectual. I feel like I'm the last dope organizer. So, that's, No.
I don't know how the homie's gonna feel about that one, but you want me to edit that out?
I ain't scared.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Peace.
Y'all, this segment of Left Disquisition is going to be so live. And just to remind you, Left Disquisition is what's being talked about, discussed, analyzed, commented, or critiqued on the platforms that I learned from. And I am joined by two very special guests, Oni and Mac of hood communist. All right. And we're going to get all the way into why it is that hood communist has been suspended, what hood communist stands for, and why hood communist is so threatening to the ruling elite. But just quickly, Mac is a member of the AAPRP, the Black Alliance for Peace, and is an organizer in the Low Country Action Committee in South Carolina. And Oni is a cadre with the All African People's Revolutionary Party and the All African Women's Revolutionary Union, an editor with Hood Communist, and a member of the National Coordinating Committee for the Venceremos Brigade. So welcome, Mac. Welcome, Oni.
Greetings.
What's up? What's up?
Hey. All right, y'all. So I just want to start real quick by reading a few short passages from the amazing piece y'all posted with lightning speed, might I add. The Lullaby Ain't Loud as It Used to Be, which was published on Monday, March 29, 2021. And y'all said, on March 29th, around 1:30 p.m. Eastern, we realized that our Twitter account was suspended. Not just us, but an editor's account was locked alongside the accounts of the All African People's Revolutionary Party and the AAPRP New Mexico. No justification was given for the locking and suspending of any of these accounts, but we have an idea. Y'all go on to say, our message to masses of colonized Africans here in the U.S. and around the world is simple. Our message to masses of all colonized masses here in the U.S. and around the world is simple. It is time for us to fall out of the trap of disunity and recognize that we share a common enemy, U.S. empire and Western imperialism. The same forces that enslaved and colonized us, wherever we are the same forces that continue to deny us self-determination that is necessary to carry out the work of revolution that our ancestors laid before us. Then you go on to say, funny enough, our suspension comes after a weekend full of targeted harassment from Twitter racists and chauvinist U.S. leftists who seethe at the idea of colonized unity within the U.S. and throughout the third world. So let's talk about it. So first and foremost, can you talk about, just in general, like, what is hood communist? Like, what is y'all goal, and why is it so threatening to the ruling elite, whatever party, whatever their specification? Like, why are y'all being targeted?
We're Russian bots. Just kidding.
Listen, I've been accused of that too, and I'm just like, the fuck? Okay.
Yeah, but we get that accusation often. But as you can see, we're very real people. We're African people. We're working class African people. And Hood Communist is a revolutionary nationalist African blog. It is unapologetically African centered. We only publish African leftist authors. Every single author we publish on the blog has been an African person. When I say African person, I mean Black folks. Also, we're communists. We're anti-capitalists. We put that forward. We're also anti-imperialists. People have called us tankies, and we wear that label proudly because we unite with all of the nations around the world who are struggling against U.S. imperialism. We see the U.S. empire as the #1 biggest threat to the future of life on this planet, correctly. So for a lot of reasons, that collection of politics makes people feel very threatened, makes people want to attack us, all sorts of people.
What you got anything to add to that, Mac? I feel like
I feel like
that
she like only sum that up.
Yeah. All right, y'all. So specifically, what is going on with Twitter? Like, obviously, you got no reason as to why you were suspended, but what is your speculation? Like, what is your sense of things?
So I'm gonna say that it's a confluence of a few different things. So the first thing, which Erica Keynes, who is also an editor at the blog, rightfully points out, Twitter has been doing this sweep of accounts that they are considered to be affiliated with Russia, Iran, basically who they're calling like propaganda machines, because now all of a sudden Twitter is into like cleaning house and all that kind of stuff. So you have that on one angle, but then on the other side, we kind of mentioned how we've been attacked sort of since we've been on Twitter from different sides of Twitter for different purposes. And so the weekend leading up to our suspension, we as Hood Communists had to take a very hard stance on Twitter in regard to a lot of the anti-China propaganda that was happening online, not just from like the people, the usual suspects, like the liberals and the Republicans or whatever you call them, not just those people, but even people who call themselves a part of this hardcore like US left, just like straight up like bullshit about China And people who aren't understanding that right now, the historic moment that we're in, the US is just trying to drum up a Cold War. They're looking for any reason to go at China. And so we took a hard line as hood communists in saying that, like, if y'all have principal critiques of China, like, go do them inside your organization, right? Like why are you on Twitter? Like why are you doing CIA work for free? Right. Period. So that was one of the first things that we had coming up against us. And then the second thing was this, which I'm sure we're going to talk about later, but the second thing, the second thing was sort of this like anti like third world or like anti-third worldist propaganda that has been developing primarily coming again from the US white left. And we could talk about that a little bit more later, but essentially like this pushback on the idea that like colonized people can lead ourselves toward liberation.
Why people be so fucking mad when they not centered in shit? It's like if they can't be at the center included or steal it, they mad about it. Yep. Sorry. Like, sorry, not sorry.
Get over it.
Yeah. Did you have anything to add in that regard, Oni?
What Max said precisely. And then also I put it the other day, like it's like walking on a tightrope while people are throwing things at you when you have like a really high follower Twitter account. Like we would tweet join an organization and one set of people will get mad. We tweet like read books. Another set of people get mad. Like there was if you are a prominent revolutionary African, like particularly socialist or communist account, there's all kinds of people looking for all kinds of reasons to come at you. And so that was like a consistent thing with our presence on Twitter. And we strongly suspect that people like just brigade reported our tweets, particularly Europeans.
All right. So the white left. Let's talk more about it. First of all, I'm confused. I'm also confused on like what left actually means in the United States, because as we know, our left is generally center or to the right of every other leftist entity in the world, including in Europe, because we have a long history in the United States of not having a very strong working class organization, not having a very strong union movement. And of course, because the United States is constitutively anti-radical and anti-black, period. So, so our left is, to the extent that there is a left, it generally is trash on foreign policy or has no foreign policy whatsoever, and generally no historical context, no historical overview, right? And so the white left, tell me your thoughts.
They're left in the sense that they have class consciousness, but they're not left in the sense that they have no understanding of colonialism and no understanding of imperialism. And certainly they have no respect for revolutionary African nationalism. They call us like ethno-nationalists and all kinds of ridiculous things. And it's like, the two issues that Mac laid out about the anti-China shit that people are going along with and the anti-third worldism that people are pushing are related. Because at the core, what third worldism is saying is that those of us that live inside of an empire are benefiting from the exploitation of the rest of the world. It's like the same thesis that, Walter Rodney laid out in How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. W.E.B. Du Bois supported in Black Reconstruction and the World in Africa. Like it's a very, very common politic among revolutionary nationalist struggles led by colonized peoples. But in the United States, it is controversial because people don't want to look at what it actually means to live in the most dangerous empire in the heart of the world. And so they object to like basic facts, like basic reality of the situation. And if you like lay it out, they're like, you're not a socialist. You're anti-Marxist. You're blah, 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 blah.
You're revisionist. That's their favorite shit. You're revisionist.
I was like, girl, I'm the crew Mr. Reyes. I don't know what you're talking about. But it's the same. It's an alignment with empire at the core. It's an alignment with white supremacy at the core. They don't want to look at what it means to live inside an empire inside of the U.S. empire when U.S. imperialism is dominant around the world.
Period. And I just spoiler alert, even Orthodox Marxism has a theory called the labor aristocracy.
Yes, it's literally right.
The labor
aristocracy. He wrote it.
So even your own shit, like you ain't even gotta read no Black folks, which anyway, even your own shit talk about the labor aristocracy. So I just wanted to put that in there. Go ahead, Mac.
Like literally, I was sitting and thinking about it because we've been called revisionist so much this weekend that like I've kind of reached the point where I'm like, well, fuck it, I'm a revisionist then. And because of what the argument is that you're trying to make to me is that white workers do not objectively benefit from imperialism inside the core of the empire. And if that's the argument that you're trying to say Marx made, I'm not the revisionist, it's you. But even if Marx did say that, then it's fuck you and fuck Marx too, girl, because that shit is not true.
He dead. He been dead too. Like he's not out here struggling.
It's not true. And I think that one of the things that people online can say all kind of shit about hood communists that they want to say, but the number one thing that they will never say about anybody who's an editor at Hood Communist is that we don't read. We read our shit and we read y'all's. Y'all read some of y'all shit and none of ours, right? So like when you even approach like a Black publication to tell us that the reason that the US is having a difficult time building a left movement or like a leftist movement is because of our revisionism and our like sectarianism or all these other fucking words that they come talking to us using. It's like, oh really? So like tell me about what happened to the labor struggles in the US of the past. What happened there? Why have Black people had to work so hard to rebuild an actual labor movement in this country? When you look at the Black workers in Bessemer, Alabama, why is it Black people having to rebuild that kind of labor movement right now in this moment, right? Like point me to a moment where white workers have not chosen to align themselves with empire when given the opportunity. Like point me to a time where they haven't. You don't even have to point me to a time where they have. Just point me to a time where they haven't. Right,
because so it ain't the populist movement in the 1880s. It ain't with the AFL. It ain't with the CIO after Taft-Hartley. Right? It ain't with the the League of Revolutionary Black Workers had to organize their own shit. So it ain't. There hasn't been a moment in history when it hasn't ultimately happened. And when Black people have both tried to integrate into mainstream organizations, but then have had to form our own shit because white people are racist. Period. Until they make a conscious decision not to be, and not just a decision, they do the work to continually not be racist. You know what blew me was when Gerald Horne said, he brought up the term white supremacy, and Leo Panitch, RIP, was like, well, that's divisive. When you come with the most prolific living historian of the 20th and 21st centuries, and you talk about white supremacy. It's not white supremacy. It's bringing up white supremacy is divisive, not white supremacy that has literally divided the world, literally stole everything, not nailed down, killed, genocided, robbed, plundered, etc. That's not divisive. It's us bringing up that.
Yeah, we just can't bring up the reality of the situation is the bottom line. Like one of the primary arguments that the anti-third worldist people in our mentions were saying were like, well, if U.S. workers benefit from imperialism, they won't want socialism. And I'm like, you can be straight up with people about what it means to live in an empire and still win socialism. I do it every day. We do it constantly. We're constantly, in APRP, we're constantly like everything that you have in the United States is built on the exploitation of Africa. We put it straight up to people and people are still like, all right, tell me more. Like if you tell people the truth, like regular ass working people, like they could deal with it. But the reality of the situation is that these folks, these people that call themselves socialists, these people that call themselves Marxists, do not want to deal with like basic facts about the situation. They do not want to deal with the fact that white supremacy comes with a material benefit. And we are allowed to talk about that because they're like, oh, that might make the white workers feel bad. Like, what the hell kind of socialism is that? Like, what kind of revolutionary organizing is that? Where you just like tell people what they want to hear because they don't want to make them feel bad because they don't want to scare them away. That's not going to work out long term.
No. And can I add something to that real quick?
Absolutely.
The other part of it is that no matter what their political tendency is here in the United States, I find that white people historically just do not want to deal with the issue of settler colonialism. They don't start any conversation from that basis. And one of the benefits of being a part of Black-led or colonized-led organizations in the United States, like Black Alliance for Peace, like the All African People's Revolutionary Party, is the political basis from the conversation, from any conversation that we start. If you cannot acknowledge that this country is a settler empire, your analysis is always going to be totally off because you keep coming to our mentions telling us white people don't benefit from imperialism. All right, so where's land back in the objective of your organization?
Mm-hmm. I think that's such an important question. I remember I was on By Any Means Necessary and somebody asked that goofy ass question. Like, do we have to, how do we talk about settler colonialism when it makes, the overwhelming majority of white people, it can be like a conversation ender. It's like, well, we are not having the right conversation then. It's like we can't continue to palliate white feelings. And we're not anti-racist, okay? We are revolutionary Africans. And so we not here to give white people tools for introspection to engage their feelings of racism. No, we are talking about some other shit, right? And so what does that mean? So what is the role of white folks in African revolutionary struggle? Is there a role?
No. They got work. We got work to do. They got work to do. The massive European settlers in the United States need a motherfucking cultural revolution. Like, y'all need to get it together. You need to organize your people to turn against white supremacy, to turn against settler colonialism, to turn against capitalism. Kwame Ture said it. Malcolm X said it. We've been saying it for like decades at this point. Like, organize your motherfucking people, because the Klan is organizing your people. The Proud Boys are organizing your people. The 3%ers are organizing your people. The Democratic and Republican parties are organizing your people, but revolutionary European people are not organizing in their communities, and they're going further and further and further to the right. And those people are not going to listen to us. Right. Even the left ones don't listen to us. So clearly that is your work while we organize our people.
And on that organizing
shit, like, I don't know how, and it's like, this is no shade to, our white comrades, to the young, the young students who are like, well, what, always, I get this question at least once per talk. Like, what should white people be? Don't ask us. That's a conversation y'all need to have. I'm over here. I'm doing the African shit. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And y'all know, stop being racist is number one. Number two, call out the racism when you see it. And number three, organize amongst your people to stop lynching, brutalizing, robbing, exploiting, and oppressing us. Like, it's really simple. And I can't give you answers to make you feel better. It's like, y'all got to figure that shit out. Y'all got to have y'all national meeting of like, when we gonna stop being racist.
Right. And on that organizing tip, I think that you can point to another reason why there's so much hostility toward hood communists, and that, especially if you read in between the lines of that thorough worldist conversation that was happening, is because we are constantly pushing a revolutionary African or a revolutionary colonized organizing message. Like, we're telling colonized people and African people to go organize for the liberation of your people. And if you look at what's happening in this historic moment, look at how organizations like Black Alliance for Peace, how organizations like All African People's Revolutionary Party, and organizations like Black Hammer are reclaiming our people into these organizations and out of these like mainstream organizations like DSA or like Communist Party, like whatever, like these white-led organizations where all these masses of colonized people have been having these horrible, fucked up organizing experiences and like have all but given up on organizing. And then you show them that there's a space that they can go to reclaim their power and like actually fight for their people. And people are flocking to those organizations right now. That suspension and those anti-third worldism conversations, that was like a direct attack on like Black and brown revolutionary leadership. They believe that the only way to a revolution is like under their model of revolution, under their model of leadership. And that shit is like objectively not true, because right now we just don't have the same objectives. So the message remains the same. They can take our fucking Twitter account, but we're going to keep saying it, like, join an organization that's fighting for the liberation of your people. Go fuck with your people and like get away from these dogmatic chauvinist US leftists. They don't have real political education to give you that's going to free you and your people.
Period. And newsflash, even in the, the 60s and 70s, the best of those white leftist elements were also looking to the third world. They were third worldists. They were tricontinentalists. They had the Bandung spirit, so to speak. So it's like, even they knew. So I don't know. It's like, we believe in this linear progress narrative where the more we go, the better we get. But when it comes to like consciousness, it's like the farther we go in time, the more backward we get. Because people are saying shit in the 1930s. They had such clarity. And I'm like, that was 80 years ago. Like, what happened? Right. So to your point, though, about hood, they can take your Twitter, but they can't take the struggle. Where should people be looking for hood communists and messages like that, which hood communists puts out there?
First and foremost, go to the platform that we control, which is our website, hoodcommunist.org. You can see at the bottom of every page a sign up for our mailing list. MailChimp cannot control what we say. My hosting cannot control what we say. So we can speak freely. So please sign up for that email list to get the articles in your inbox every week. And then also, we're still on Instagram. We actually got like a large boost in followers after we got suspended on Twitter on our Instagram. So check us out at Hood Communist on Instagram. And we're also on Facebook as well, at Hood Communist.
Perfect. Anything else, Mac and Oni? This has been such a dope conversation. What else? What else? Enlighten our BPM audience.
Go off.
Any other? Well, I'm just mean with if y'all have any other thoughts, comments, philosophical treatises.
Well, Sekou, who is, like I said, a Nkrumah's Ture, so the Nkrumah is Kwame Nkrumah, of course, and the Ture is Sekou Ture, and that's the ideology of my party, the APRP. But Sekou Ture always said, if the enemy's not doing anything against you, you're not doing anything. And so when we get attacked, it's very, very stressful, but it also is an indication that we are moving in the right direction, that we are saying the correct things, that we are challenging the correct people, and so we're going to keep doing it. People can stay mad, people can stay pressed. We're still going to say join an organization. We're still going to say read books. We're still going to say learn with your comrades. We're still going to say build in the real world outside the internet. We're still going to say have direct conversations with people when you're in conflict. We're still going to be pushing that the colonized world is going to lead the revolutionary struggle because these positions are correct, regardless of how people feel about them, regardless if it gets them in their feelings. It doesn't matter. Like, it needs to be said. And like you pointed out, in the 30s, in the 40s, in the 50s, in the 60s, we had a clear understanding of these politics. And in response to counter-revolution from the US government, the settler US government, the left movement in the United States has moved further and further and further to the right. And now we're at this point where people are talking about like socialism with American characteristics with a straight fucking face. And you're like, what the hell? Like, I saw someone say socialism with American characteristics. What does that mean? Like police shootings and the Trail of Tears? Like, no, like we're not reclaiming American identity for the Socialist Project. So absolutely, we're still going to put forward an unapologetically revolutionary African perspective, a revolutionary socialist perspective, because these politics are correct.
And then
socialism with let me just quickly say, socialism with American characteristics is embedded liberalism.
Yes.
That's it.
No difference.
That's all the socialism America got. And they, anyway, Mac, please.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, we also have to continue to lift up the names of our political prisoners. Hood Communists got suspended, which is like an obvious, blatant form of censorship and what people call canceling. But like as individual editors, we are still free. Like our bodies are not behind jail cells. It sucks to have your Twitter account taken, but like we're going to be all right. But as the white left gets angry, and as all these people are angry about us telling them to join organizations and reading, just yesterday we learned, that Romaine Chip Fitzgerald, longest held political prisoner, of a Black Panther, passed away after over 50 years in prison. But what many people don't understand about his story, and y'all can read more about this on the Hood Communist blog on Thursday, is that he came to the Black Panther Party as a prisoner in jail, in reading groups with other people who were in prison. They came across Black Panther Party literature, and it inspired him to want to, when he got out of jail, to go find these people and like change the conditions in his community. We have no excuses not to read and not to organize as people who are just walking around every day, touching grass, looking at the stars. And so we have to keep our political prisoners lifted. Free Mumia Abu Jamal, free Sundiata Akole, free Reverend Joy Powell. Who am I missing on here?
Matulu Shakur.
Free them all.
Free them all. Period. And nothing else to say. And also, Twitter, raggedy ass Twitter, restore Hood Communist motherfucking account. But as has been noted here, the work continues. So thank you so much for joining me. This was dope. Read Hood Communist. I read Hood Communist every week. I learn every week. And, the struggle continues.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. So guess what, y'all? We have another segment of the Doctor's In, and we have 3 very interesting questions. So question 1, what we got, Jared?
They definitely are interesting. The first one here is, quote, my question is on applying or interviewing for grad school programs. How open or direct would you recommend being about radical anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, communist politics when applying to a program? I'm currently interviewing for a place in a fully funded master's program on education and development, and recognize that a lot of the material presented will be more reactionary, neoliberal, and imperialist in nature. But I plan to bring a critical lens and do my research and thesis on my own terms in conjunction with others, and hopefully be able to contribute some small amount toward radical scholarship. Obviously, you don't want to be disingenuous or misrepresent yourself or your views. And if you have to, it might not even be a good program for you. Should I be straight up with them or be more vague and wait till I have possibly gained entry to the program? It's a good question, end quote. That is, end quote, good question. What do you think?
I feel like I'm a bad person to ask about this because, I just be out here. I show up in every space exactly as I am, and motherfuckers gonna like it or not like it. So I say that to say, like, when I interview for jobs, I study Black communist socialist thought. My analysis is an anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, Black liberationist analysis. And so I don't, walk up to the mic like, I am an anti-imperialist and a communist and I believe in Black liberation. But it's like my analysis, it bears out in my analysis period. It bears out in the way I answer questions and in the way in which I understand what my role is or my historical task is as a professor, as an academic, as an intellectual, what have you. And so I think that that's sort of how you approach it. Have your politics, right? And I think you can have some, again, like you don't necessarily have to say, we're trying to burn this shit down immediately, but you can critique neoliberalism. You can critique the ways in which extant scholarship has reproduced particular ways of knowing that are that uphold structures. I think you can say those types of things in ways that aren't necessarily inflammatory, because it's probably as much about delivery as it is about what the content is. And again, I always believe with the academy, if people want you, you're gonna get the job, you're gonna get into the program, you're gonna get the position. If they don't want you, it doesn't matter what you say. You could be milquetoast, lily white, lily livered, fucking Uncle Tom, and you're still not going to get it because they don't want you. And so I just think show up as you are. I think if there's something that you're like, I don't know if I should say that or not, maybe just don't say it. But you absolutely want to give them a sense of who you are, because you don't want them to admit you under some false pretense and then you're unhappy or you're uncomfortable because they were expecting something from you. And you turn out to be something else, something you're not. Like, as you mentioned in the question, if they reject you, it's not somewhere you want to be anyway. So I say just come as you are and do the work that you want to do, knowing that it's going to be hard to do that work basically anywhere. There might be select individuals who are supportive of radical scholarship, but it's going to be difficult, period, because the academy is the intellectual arm of the state. But it's like, squad up, build your networks, be rigorous, and you'll be all right. So I would say just show up with your politics, period. What do you think, Jared?
Oh, I largely agree. And as someone who has been described as being politically out of the closet, it's at the end of the day, it's going to be known where you stand. And I think everything you said is good advice. One other thing I would add is that what I've noticed, more trouble comes based on the prescriptions people suggest as opposed to the criticism or critique that they lay out to get there. So in other words, if you, for instance, focus on do anti-imperialist work or anti-capitalist work, but your prescriptions stay away from saying things like don't vote for the Democratic Party, I think you can carve out a different kind of career. But I think once you start prescribing and encouraging people left of that kind of political, narrow range of acceptability, that's where I think people start getting into trouble. But if you step back as an academic and just sort of say, I'm just investigating, I'm offering this, my focus is on the left and these radical histories, I think you can sort of, what do they say, walk through the raindrops to some extent. But to your point, if you're wanted, they'll come get you. If you're not, they won't. And I think it's much harder to hide what you really think and what your work is going to produce anyway. So you might as well just be upfront from jump. So
and be rigorous. Yeah. Like, I feel like one of my saving graces is that I produce a relatively large amount of scholarship that's I'll say it's pretty good, and so that can shield you in a particular way because it's like, you're meeting whatever the demands are of the academy. And so even Joana Fernandez talked about this, like her shit is airtight because she does so much outside the academy. And so it's much, much harder to come for you if you are doing really, really great scholarship.
Absolutely right. That's right.
All right. What's next, Jared?
Okay. In a previous episode, when talking about Judas and the Black Messiah, you all alluded to not needing these major media conglomerates to tell our stories, and I completely agree. What are your thoughts on former Black Panther Party and BLA member Jamal Joseph's upcoming show created by him and based on his memoir, Panther Baby, which will be on Stars? Interesting question.
I'm gonna kick it to you, Jared, because I only know enough to be ignorant about this whole thing.
I don't know the details of the project, but I just think in general, the concern is never with, for instance, the originating work. So in this case, Jamal Joseph's memoir. The issue is what happens to the work by the time the final version ends up being distributed by Stars. And that's something he may not have much control over. It may be entirely out of his hands. And historically, there's been, there's usually some drama between the original product and what people's visions are and what ends up coming across on our screen. So again, for me, it is media product. It is part, as you said, of academia, the media arm or the media arm of the imperial state. So it's going to suffer something. Engage it with as many grains of salt as you can muster. If you engage it at all, I would say certainly go back and read the book first. If you haven't already, become familiar with that memoir before you engage it in its commercial form. And then I think you'll see whatever is being done. But I don't look forward to these kinds of products. I always am, so I'm not looking for, I wanted to read Jamal's work. I wanted to read Panther Baby. So when I want to hear, but we'll see. And then maybe we'll come back and talk about it later.
I have a question for you, Jared, and I guess just for our audience to engage. Is there a fine, it seems to be, I guess the question / comment, there seems to be a fine line between like bringing our stories to the mainstream and then like dry snitching. Because it's kind of like, when we're telling our strategies, our tactics, our mindset, our approach, we just putting it all out there. So I just, what do you think about that? It's kind of like, do we need to tell everything all the time?
No, again, and my argument, actually, what you're offering here is, I think, a nice twist to my Vernon philosophy of Black media avoidance. I don't think we should be looking for ourselves at all in these products, and certainly, to your point, we shouldn't be looking for our tactics and strategies to be laid out either. So again, I stand in that DAT course position that you've outlined so well, and usually when it comes to these products, because I engage them to the extent I think is necessary for an analysis or for my work as a teacher, but in terms of what I want from my heart or my political education, this is not where I go. So I don't know. I think we should. The fine line is it should be wiped away. We shouldn't be wanting to see any of this at all. In the context we find ourselves in. The media that we're getting is hostile. So if we want to learn about Jamal Joseph and the Black Panthers, go to the book, go to the histories, go to the interviews, go to the source himself. He's still here. Go to our mixwhatilike.org and see our interview with him from just a couple months ago. I mean, but this is the kind of work I think we should be walking away from. And I would even encourage, to the extent it's possible. I know it's difficult having no one ask me to tell my story in a documentary or whatever, but I think we need to be avoiding these outlets in general as much as possible. So even those who are being invited to tell their stories there should be encouraged and invited elsewhere with other formations to do it.
Listen, I think that is I think that's right. and I think, and I wonder, I mean, I feel like documentaries are a little bit different. I don't know if they are or not. I don't know. I think on the one hand, yeah, I think that you're right in terms of going to the books, going to the interviews and stuff, but it's just, even with like documentaries, which are more, I guess, I don't know, maybe filmmakers have more autonomy over documentaries, but I really struggle with that, because on the one hand, like I said, like it does get particular information to broad audiences, but it's just kind of like,
and documentaries themselves can be even worse, in the sense that they carry with it that suggestion that they are more serious and more accurate than so when they mess up, or when they're told through the imperial lens, it can even be more dangerous and more damaging. So I would just prefer we just be very hands-offish with this stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, next question.
Okay, so this next one is equally challenging and provocative, and goes like this. Quote, I recall hearing a few months ago, I don't recall the source, that Bayard Rustin was a CIA informant in his later years. Have either of you seen or heard similar information? I have searched online and have not been able to validate this claim. In terms of Black Power media, I posed this question previously to Dr. Ball via Instagram. Any idea what's up with the RSS feed on Patreon for podcasts? I'm a big podcast fan listener, and it's more convenient for me than YouTube. So just curious if there's a plan in the works to address this issue. So the latter part of the question is very easy, and I apologize if I missed the IG question. But yes, we are moving towards podcasting. So definitely stay tuned. We're on it and moving in that direction. But Dr. CBS, this question about Bayard Rustin and his CIA informant work in his later years, what do you think about that?
Yeah, Rustin is one of those people that I'd be put in the camp with, like the Bunches, the Jurgens, those types, where I'm not a fan. People love him. I'm not a fan. But yeah, I think what's been proven is that he was doing work with the CIA in terms of the Dominican Republic, getting Trujillo out of office, and then implementing a new regime that was subsequently overthrown again in a CIA coup. And so he was working with, so he was managing that and giving, providing information as to whether what types of elections will be possible in that milieu. But he was also at the same time being investigated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, right? For his work, his civil rights work, for his work with King, for, the FBI was investigating everybody. Bayard Rustin had, I want to say he had briefly been a member of was it the Communist Party, or
I think so, yeah.
Anyway, whatever socialist affiliations he had. So of course he was being investigated, like MLK was, like many other folks were. And so it's interesting that, sometimes the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, because there's also this case of this man called Richard Gibson, who became like a CIA asset, was also being investigated by the FBI because he was pushing this like Maoist line and was connected to all these different Black Power folks. But anyway, yeah, so Rustin absolutely did have, CIA connections in that way. Right. But Jared, you have interesting tidbit to add to this Rustin story.
Well, just that, some of us have known or been aware for some time that, Rustin, towards the end of his life, was infamously known to have declared an end to the civil rights movement and, the dawning of the now next stage of struggle, which involved, of course, rights around sexuality, gender. I don't know so much about class. I don't think that was overtly on his list then at the end as well. So it was just sort of this, for me, at least my perspective, this, he sort of prefaced or added to perhaps the sort of hostility and antagonism between the Black liberation struggle and the gay LGBTQ liberation struggle, where one is pitted against the other and one is supposed to, supplant the other. And he certainly played a role in that towards the end of his life. So just an unfortunate conclusion to his political career, as far as I'm concerned. And but And then I do think it is interesting that part of his CIA work was uncovered by the FBI, who were spying on him for other reasons, like to your point about left hand not knowing the right hand. So anyway, that was it as far as I'm aware. But anyway,
these problematic figures. This is why, to quote Erica Kane, Jemima Pierre, and many others, this is why we support movements and the people and not individuals, because these people be doing all sorts of shit. But anyway, that's our segment of the Doctor's In. So keep the questions coming, and we look forward to answering more. All right, y'all. So we do have a segment of In These Comments this week, drawn from the chat from just last week's episode of the Last Dope Intellectuals. So what you got, Jared?
So a number of very interesting comments, of course. I grabbed just a couple for us to quickly talk about, one of which is a light criticism, perhaps, but I believe this came during the part where we were recapping the critique of my interview with Nora Ericat, and specifically our joint criticism of her approach to electoral politics. And Tahir Abdullah says, quote, "As a socialist, what frustrates me is how my comrades and teachers on the left can't see the revolutionary potential of the people who put Biden in office. It ain't about Biden," end quote.
I don't think so. Let me just say, I don't think it's that we can't see the revolutionary potential of the people who put Biden in office. In fact, I think it's quite the opposite. I think that we are annoyed with all of our revolutionary energy going toward electing a fucking bum. And, and yes, we know that it's not about Biden. It's not about Kamala. It's not about the rainbow coalition of imperialists he's putting in his cabinet. But it's like, we are fucked up out here. We have other shit to do. And when all of that energy has to go or is channeled toward waiting in line for hours to vote for Biden, or getting people to rock the vote and all that stuff. It's the diminution of that revolutionary energy, right? That revolutionary potential. We always believe in our people, but we want our people to be doing things that are in our interest, and not be doing things that are ultimately said to be in our interest, like electing Biden, and then he gets in office and is just fucking Trump light. And he tripping on stairs and shit. So like that is our critique, right? So I just want to put that out there.
No, and I love it because just for the sake of brevity, I actually wrote out one sentence. And again, we did not plan this, but what I wrote to summarize my own response is, we do see their potential, as do those in power, which is why so much money and effort is spent pushing that potential into jet blast deflectors. And for me, that is a reference to my time serving a sentence in the United States Navy, and where on an aircraft carrier, they use jet blast deflectors so that jets can take off from flight decks without burning up and blowing up all the people behind them. So they just raise this jet blast deflector from the deck, and the jet blast goes into it and is all the potential to burn up and blow and to tear it down is just safely deflected onwards and upwards, as is the potential revolutionary response that we have here. So yeah, anyway, that's what anyway. Yeah.
I think that's such an apt and wonderful analogy. So fuck Biden is the moral of that story.
Please, exactly. And as you young whippersnappers say today, period. All right, so the next one comes from forgive me for any mispronunciation here, de El Sendero. Professor Charisse, do you think sometime you could do a discussion on racial capitalism?
Yes, I can. That time is not going to be right now, but I'm happy to do it. So tell me, y'all. So let me know, actually, do y'all want like an episode of LDI dedicated to racial capitalism? Do y'all want a racial capitalism segment? on each show or on some shows that I can do some aspect, because, I have a particular definition that has these different elements of racial capitalism, and where I can also talk about other people's engagements with racial capitalism and why I think most of them are whack. Do y'all want a members only type of study group on racial capitalism? Like, what do y'all want? Like, what sort of, or, some combination of those? Like, let me know what you want and I got you. But yes, I'm happy to talk about racial capitalism, racist capitalism, race and capitalism, capitalist racism, which is, my own neologism. I'm happy to talk about all of that. And get to the bottom of a lot of the bad faith white leftist critiques of like, well, racial capitalism, doesn't that mean that there's, is there a non-racial cap? No, it's not. And ain't nobody saying that. We ain't been saying that. We've been said it's not that. So stop and quit getting mad because we say race and y'all white. So anyway, yeah, I'm happy to do that. But just let me know what format.
All those are great suggestions. And I just know one thing we definitely need more of is Dr. CBS's white people voice. So we definitely have to find ways to bring that back.
And I want to reiterate, I am not racist. I have like 3 white friends.
There it is. So the last one I have actually comes from one of our guests from this episode, who was in attendance last week. And during our reflection and discussion of Ras Baraka's commentary about where activism should go and how we need to support the activist elite, the dear brother Mac wrote that he doesn't know what's worse, this discussion with Ras Baraka or Roland Martin's greasy neck. Which I just... Again, I can't help. Sometimes I drag this show down to the worst forms of our socialization, and I admit, my tendency towards the petty in the African humor, humorous context. But anyway, shout out to Hood Communists and all their good work and good humor.
Period. I mean, we are a roasting people. We got the dozens. Like, we live to flame a motherfucker, and Roland Martin can get it all of the time, period.
There it is. So anyway, those were all I had. Thanks to those for sending in the comments. Keep them coming and keep that chat lively, and we'll continue to try to appreciate them as much as we can.
From the hilarious to the critical to the serious, we got you covered. All right, y'all. What I am on this week is a book contract. So I have an advance contract from a publisher. I'll share at some point which publisher it is. It's probably an open secret at this point anyway. But I just want to mention a couple things. So for those of you who are in the process of writing a book, especially, and this is germane particularly to academic presses or university presses, because it's a little bit different with trade presses, but some things to look for. 1, if at all possible, see if your book can come out automatically in paperback alongside hardback and ebook, because the paperbacks are cheaper and it will ensure that the book is more accessible. Hardbacks are they're good for like libraries, but see if you can get your book to come out in paperback, if not automatically within like a short time period, like 3 or 6 months. Secondly, there's something called right of first refusal. So generally speaking, in contracts, they will write that if you published your first book with a press, then they get the right of first refusal for your second project. So they get to look at it and decide whether or not they want to publish it. So generally waive that right of first refusal, because you want to shop your second project around. Not that there's anything wrong with the first press, but you just, you want to have the latitude to, it's your work. You want to have the latitude to shop it around and publish it with whoever you want. In contracts, you also want to be clear about the timeline, and then speak with your editor to make sure that, there's some flexibility there. You want to look to see what the royalties are and any issues around getting in advance. All those things you want to think about when you're signing a book contract. And these are sort of things that and I always look over every contract that I have with my mentors, because, they have insight that I may or may not have. And, just make sure like they want to publish your book as much as you want to publish your book with them. So make sure that the terms are favorable. And yeah, so that's really all I want to say. You know, I'm excited to have this advanced contract because it gives me a sort of hard deadline to work toward. Things feel like less nebulous. I have an editor that I can go to with sort of questions about where particular aspects of the book are. So things are moving along, y'all. 2022, Black Scare, Red Scare. Look for it. So that's what I'm on. All right, Jared. So we reached the end of the show. Do you have anything that you want to add?
I do. And again, as usual, another great show, a powerful banger again this week. A number of things came up in the Kamau interview just very quickly that I think I wanted to just note here. One is that I think it's important to note the importance of organization and the contradictions you can only experience in those moments. That is, you know, the mammies versus the fridge. You know, it's like only in struggle can you really learn how this stuff works. You know, so that was good to hear. And then the only other thing I wanted to say about that is that Noam Chomsky stays wrong on the issue of political prisoners, political assassinations, and on voting. So as much as he may be the good white man Kamau wants to give him credit for, he still is limited in his own genius. So
I can't believe okay. There was just so many people to quote. Like, okay. At any rate, everybody, we all have our people.
Absolutely. We all got and the only other thing I wanted to add after that other incredibly good and powerful and important interview is free hood communists. You know what I'm saying?
Period.
And shout out to them. So
period. Twitter, get your shit together ASAP. All right, y'all. That is our show this Friday evening. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me. I'm Dr. CBS here with Doc Jab, as his name now says. And I am signing off.